Just like equations, we're going to just kind of step this up into some multi-step inequalities. So we might have some distributive property, we might have some combining like terms, you might have to move variables from one side to the other, but the steps are very similar. Just remember that one trick: when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to change the direction of the symbol. So let's start off with letter A, drop a line, and we're going to do our GEMDAS backwards. So the first thing I'm going to look for is subtraction or addition, and I have addition, so I'm going to subtract 7. Bring down y divided by negative 6 is less than 2. Now I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 6, and since I am multiplying by a negative number, we need to change the direction of the symbol, so it's y is greater than negative 12. It tells us to graph the solution, so I'm going to put negative 12 in the middle of my number line. It's going to be an open circle, and it's going to be greater, which goes to the right. Why don't you try letter B on your own? All right. We did not have to change the direction of the symbol in letter B. Since I divided by a positive number, nothing had to switch. Okay, example 2 has variables on both sides, so very similar. Why don't you try example 2 also on your own? We didn't have to graph example 2 because it only said to solve. Hopefully your solution matches mine. X is less than 4. Alright, let's move along to some more complex inequalities. For this one, we have distributive property. So the first thing that I'm going to do is going to distribute this 4 to the parentheses. So I'll get 8b minus 3 is greater than 8b plus 12. If you know the answer, just keep it to yourself, because I'm going to keep going. I'm going to put variables on one side, and I'm going to put numbers on the other. So I'm going to move this 8b over to the left. I always like to move my variables first. And then it actually cancels out on both sides, and you have negative 3 is greater than 12. So you might look at that and say, where'd the variable go? Something wrong happened. What do I do? You look at the statement that you have. Negative 3 is greater than 12. That is obviously not correct, because negative numbers are not greater than positive numbers. So this is an example of back in chapter 1 when we had things that were no solution. Since I get a false statement, since this is not true, there's no solution to this inequality. Alright, you might be able to kind of think about where this next one's going, but just kind of play along with me. So I'm going to distribute 10w minus 2 is less than or equal to 7 plus 10w. I'm going to move my variables. Let's move them to the left. I don't know, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to subtract this 10w since it's on the number side, and then I subtract it over here. And same thing, it actually cancels again, but I get negative 2 is less than or equal to 7. That is true. Negative 2 is less than 7. So even though I have no variables left, which means I don't have like something that I can put on a number line and graph, I do have this true statement. So since I have a true statement, the answer, if you remember, was infinitely many solutions. So the variable disappeared, so I know it's one of my wacky answers. So when you get that situation, you say, do I have a true statement or do I have a false statement? Alright, let's see what this might look like in a word problem. You need a mean score of at least 90 points to advance to the next round of the touchscreen trivia game. So here are the 4 games. You got 95, 91, 77, and 89. What scores in the 5th game will allow you to advance? So our 4 steps, our first step is understand the problem. So we know the scores of the 4 games, right? Like those are on the side, okay, over here. We also are asked to find the score in the 5th game and we want a mean of at least 90. So we want 90 or greater. So greater than or equal to 90. So you think to yourself, how do I find mean, right? You add them all up and you divide. So I'm just going to add these all up together. 95, 91, 77, and 89 give me a total of 352. So 352 plus whatever I get on this fifth game, all divided by 5, right, because I'm playing 5 games, has to be greater than or equal to 90. So that's my plan. My plan was to write an inequality. Now, the next step is to solve it, so you just kind of follow your inverses. First thing I'm going to do is multiply by 5 to get rid of it. Remember, the grouping symbol of the fraction bar is blocking the subtraction from happening, so you have to get rid of the 5 first. So I have 352 plus x is greater than or equal to 450. So now I subtract 352. And I need to be greater than or equal to 98 points in order to get advanced. So the last step is to look back and see if that makes sense. So what you would do is you would add up all these plus 98, divide by 5, and see if you get the average of 90. If you have any questions, write them down and ask me when you come to class.